YouTube, Rook here from Rook Geek Goodness, my little channel on the interweb for all things geeky and cool. In this video, I'm finally going back to what I said I would do for the last few months, which was the Redux video for the GOTHITROPOLIS Raven done by the Four Horsemen. Now, as I talked about in the previous videos, I actually shot that particular video about 6 months ago when I originally started doing YouTube videos. I actually shot it in my light box. I hated how it came out. I hated the lights. I hated the audio. I hated everything about it. I despise that video. I cannot even look at it now. That's how bad it is. If you guys want to search it through my playlist, you're more than welcome to, but I actually hated it. And I said to myself, Rook, this figure is such a good figure that it needs the proper review. It needs a breakdown. It needs a final thoughts. It needs, the way I do my reviews now is the way this thing needs to be presented to you, my audience, my subscribers. So this is what I'm going to be doing now. I'm going to be doing the GOTHITROPOLIS Raven figure in a full breakdown and final thoughts video. So let's talk about this figure as a whole. What is this guy all about? What is the, Rook, you're saying this is such a great figure. Why do you like it so much? Well, as I said, this was done by the Four Horsemen. These are the same people who work with Mattel and work with NECA. At Mattel, they did the Masters of the Universe Classics, they did the DC Universe Classics, and they did a lot of the older figures in NECA as well. They branched off and made their own company years and years ago, and in 2005, I got my notes here, in 2005, they actually put a fan vote together through their forum, through their website, to make their very first figure for their company. And that was part of, I don't know if it's part of the GOTHITROPOLIS line per se, but it was their very first figure they did through their own construction, basically. They did one for 4 years, from 2005 to 2008, this was the winning figure in 2008, which is part of the Fan Expo, or Fantastic Exclusives, which it says up here. This was their last figure that I know of they actually did for their fan voted figure. They actually had a set of figures that basically you'd go to their website and vote on what figure you wanted, and the Black Raven here won the actual vote. So, long story short, basically, they tried putting this figure out. They attempted to actually build this figure, but because of the pricing of the tooling and the construction overseas, they couldn't actually make this particular figure. So instead of scrapping the entire figure, what they decided to do in 2013 was hold Kickstarter. That's when crowdfunding was becoming very, very popular, so they went to Kickstarter to see if the fans would actually help put this figure out. They had phenomenal amount of success making this particular figure, that particular campaign. They had 1,500 backers, and they had $300,000 in revenue to actually make this figure. So what they decided to do is they put stretch goals in place, and they actually made more figures, which I'll talk about that in the breakdown segment. This is a 6-inch scale figure. It has 34 points of articulation, and there's 13 variants, and we'll talk about that in a second. So we're going to head into a breakdown segment. We're going to look at the packaging, we're going to look at the figure as a whole, we're going to look at the articulation, the paint, and the accessories. At the end of the video, and final thoughts for you, the viewer, I'm going to make a conclusion. Should you actually pick up the Four Horseman Raven figure from the GOTHITROPOLIS line? Stay tuned, guys. We're going to a breakdown segment. Okay guys, we're in our breakdown segment looking at the GOTHITROPOLIS Raven in packaging. So the very first thing we always do is look at the actual packaging of the figure. I decided to leave the figure in packaging because it's one of the functions you can actually do with this packaging, which I really, really like. So let's actually look at the packaging first. As you notice here, it does have the Fantastic series up here, and it has the logo for the GOTHITROPOLIS symbol here. I'll kind of pull it back a little bit so you can see the actual figure as a whole, and it's a very nice set of packaging. You got the weapon over here, which is an accessory. You have extra arms, actually hands over here, and more down here, which might be a little difficult to notice in the packaging. Great kind of gothic lettering here at GOTHITROPOLIS, of course. On the side, you have more of a ornate picture of a bust, that, what the Raven would look like, and the same thing happens over here. Now, the back is the is the part that really steals the show. Again, this is the Hadron Horabis, excuse me, the Dichomus Horabin is the name of this particular Raven, this black one here. Now, what they decided to do with the Horsemen, when they hit their stretch goals, as I mentioned, they actually made a set of variants. A total of 13 variants. As you can see, these are all available here, down both sides of the actual packaging here. They had all sorts of ones you can get. I mean, you can get the white raven, you can get a cardinal, you can get an eagle, a griffin. What made it really, really sweet was this guy down here, Minotaur the duck. This was a running gag that actually happened in the forums of the Horseman site. They decided, you know, it'd be funny if they had a Minotaur the duck, and they actually built this as their 13th figure. This was an exclusive to the Kickstarter program only, which it mentions it right down here. There's a huge bio and write-up that talks about the actual figure itself. Now, if you notice, it might be kind of difficult, but if you see these plastic kind of folds, what makes this really, really sweet is that these folds go across the card of the entire figure throughout the bottom, the sides, and the top, and you can actually put the figure back on card, which is what I have done here. That's why it might look a little weird in the packaging. So what we're going to do is take them out of the packaging and look at the figure, the articulation, the paint, and the accessories. Okay guys, we have the Dichomus Horabron, the Black Raven, out of its packaging and fully displayed here, with all his accessories in front of me here. Now, let's actually look at the figure first. That's the important part of this. So if we look at the figure, you'll notice a silly amount of paint and detail. They actually put sculpting in and tooling into the actual head of the bird. I don't know if you can see it, but you can actually see the feathers. The detail they put on this thing is astounding. The amount of, it just pops off the figure, and it's such a great design. I absolutely love how this thing looks. Now, let's actually break down the actual figure itself. Let's talk about all the paint. First, the paint itself is very, very solid, very, very clean, very ornate. I mentioned that on the packaging here when we looked at the actual side shot here. It has more of an ornate, rustic sort of approach. I love the color palette they use. I love the way it looks. I love it how it's tooled. You'll see all the feathers on the arms here. If we spin them around, you'll notice he has this kind of, I'll move his arms up a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. You'll see this belt he has on. This belt is kind of free floating, and he has all these kind of artifacts. He has a horn, he's got a little monkey's paw back here, but the belt is free moving, so it doesn't come off, it doesn't detach, so it stays on the figure. Now, if we look down further, he has kind of a loincloth with some embroidery here, kind of this gold or more rustic color down here, goes all the way down almost to the ground. He has kind of like, looks like plates on the back of his legs. And one thing to take note of is his legs. His legs look really, really weird. They are bent back legs. I call them chicken legs. They look like chicken legs to me. But these are both one of the coolest looking parts of the figure and the biggest weakness in my opinion about this figure. So let's actually look now, since we looked at all the paint, and let's actually look at the back here of the paint so you can see more of the back tooling and the way it looks. And let's actually look at one other spot here, these little wings I want to bring your attention to. These wings open up. There's some articulation on these winglets that open up here. They actually have, and I'll see if I can find a picture of it. I talked about it in my old video. He has these very, very big wings. You basically pull these wings off here, these small little wings, you can get these huge, gigantic wings about the size of the figure, and they're actually massive. This figure looks so cool with those wings. Unfortunately, I have not been able to find any yet, as well as finding a flight stand. I wanted a flight stand, and I wanted to get that wing pack. It was an add-on pack. I've not yet been able to find one, which is a very, very, very bad shame, because I think he will look so amazing with that wing pack on. So let's actually look at the articulation. First things first, the head itself can spin 360 degrees, as you see here, and up and down movement. I did mention that the wings do have articulation. They do move up and actually back and forth, really. The arms themselves can go out to almost a full T, and he has full range of motion of the arms itself. They spin 360. He has a single elbow, actually excuse me, a double elbow here, double elbow joint. He has a wrist swivel and a bend at the wrist itself. He has a rocker joint, which is sort of a free roaming joint here. Very matches the universe, very DC Universe classic, since the Horsemen built this figure. And they use basically their buck, their design of their buck, for their actual figure itself. The legs themselves can go out to almost a full split. And this is where you get those chicken legs. They do have a double jointed, actually, yes, a double jointed knee here, as well as a bend back here for this joint here. So he bends at the knee here, and he bends back at this leg here. So you can get some very, very wide stances, as you can see me doing here with him. Again, this is probably part of his bad problem, in my opinion. Because the way these legs are bent, it's very difficult to get him into a very stable pose most of the time. That's about the most stable pose you can really get him in. And you'll have to kind of, he's very, very finicky. You have to fiddle with him a lot to get him in a really good pose. So, I mean, And one of the other things I want to bring your attention to is his feet. They do spin 360, and they articulate at the actual foot itself. Now, let's actually talk about the accessories, because that's a really cool part of this particular figure. Let me get him back standing up. There we go. We'll talk about the weapon last. Let's actually talk about these guys here. As you see, we have two sets. Oops, I dropped the figure. Put him back up. He has two sets of claws. He has this closed set here and an open set here. These aren't hands, which you really think they are. These are feet, and I'll demonstrate that shortly. If you take out this feet, as you hear me pulling them out, these are meant to be plugged into the feet joint here. And now you're going to say, well, Rook, how the heck does he stand now? Because you got these weird funky feet in place. Well, it's not really designed to stand this way. This is why I say he needs a flight stand. Because you can put these feet in place, and it's really designed to hold these weapons in very, very cool and dynamic poses. Especially these ones. So let's actually put those ones in so you can see what those look like. I leave the normal kind of these webbed feet in. I almost webbed, but you can see what I'm talking about here. These kind of feet here, kind of the chicken feet here. And I keep those in because that's how the figure stands properly. Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting, because you can have these closed feet. And I think a flight stand for this sort of effect would be even better. And the reason why I say that, I see how the feet are closed. What you're doing is you're going to slip this weapon through his talon like this, so he can actually, you'll pose him with the weapon in his foot. So I think that's a really, really different way to actually have a figure attacking somebody. I mean, you can have him in a really cool flight stand with him holding his big old weapon here. I don't know if you can see it, but right like that. So I actually have to talk about his weapon. Let me switch out his feet again. But those are what these are. These are actually not hands, they're feet. At one time I thought these were hands, and I'm like, well, I can't take his hands out. Why? It's because they're feet, not hands. So I was very, very confused about that. So let me put these back in. And they do snap in really, really snug as you hear it, you can hear it pop in place. I've taken these things off on and off many, many times, and it is a very, very durable figure. He is showing his wear a little bit. The joints are getting a little loose, at least on mine, only because I pose them. I don't really quote unquote play with them, but I pose them a lot. Now, let's actually talk about his accessories, his weapons. He has two individual weapons that can form into one big weapon. Let's actually look at this kind of Mace Morning Star weapon. Great amount of detail, silly amount of paint and tooling, the way they made this thing look. This right here is a chain. This is a real chain. It is metal. It is not plastic, and it does have a coppery look to it. That's how this is designed to appear. But it is a real functioning chain. I mean, it's not plastic. It does work, and it feels, and it operates like a normal chain would. Now, let's actually look at the scythe, which is this hooked portion here. You can actually see the detail. I'll kind of zoom it in so you can zoom in a little bit here. You'll see all like this tooling over here and this languages, these runes written on it. A silly amount of wash and detail was used on this scythe. So what you normally do is you put the weapon together. It actually snaps in place. It holds itself pretty well, and you'll see me pull it back into the shot. It's a long, long weapon. This thing is really designed to be a dual-handed weapon, a dual-wielded weapon. I'll try to put it here in his hands. You have to bear with me when I try to, I usually have this, all set and prepped, ready to go. So you have to bear with me when I actually get it into his grip, because it is very difficult to try to get him to hold this weapon sometimes, only because of, like I said, this particular figure is getting rather loose, and he is, like I said, showing his age. Only because like I said, I have him posed a lot. So it would look something like this. I mean, the pose I have him in constantly, at least when he's displayed on my shelf over here, is something along the lines of this. That's the pose I have this figure in. So I think it looks like a phenomenally done figure. I absolutely love it, between the paint, the articulation, the add-on stuff that you can actually put more on this figure. You can put those big old wings. You can put them on a flight stand. There's much more out of the packaging with the add-on components than as a standard figure itself. It's more based on some of his parts that you can actually do for this figure. The crazy amount of detail on his Scythe Morning Star weapon. Now, one thing you can do with him, and I want to make a note of this for you, because I talked about it in the last video I did, is he can actually dual wield the Morning Star and the scythe. You can put one weapon in each hand, so he can dual wield these guys. Put in one hand here. And if you want him to wield it something along this line, you can actually get him dual wielding if you want to get really crazy. So you can do something along these lines. But the additional feet that you see here really, in my opinion, only shine when you have a flight stand. Because the way these things are designed, you can't really pose him with these feet unless you have him held up by something. So with that being said, guys, I hope you liked this breakdown segment. Let's go to final thoughts and wrap up this video. Okay guys, final thoughts on the Four Horseman GOTHITROPOLIS Black Raven figure. Like I said in the breakdown segment, I absolutely love this figure. It does have a high price point though. When I bought it, I mentioned in the breakdown, it cost me about $40, and that was in 2015, so you're looking at about 2 years ago approximately, and it is a very, very hard to come by figure. So hard to come by, I mean, if you go on eBay, you'd be looking at about, I would say, anywhere from $75 up to $100, $120 to pick up this figure. It's not a cheap figure, and this was the main figure they built for the Kickstarter. All the variants though have way ranging prices depending on what you're looking for. Again, the only bad part I mentioned in the breakdown was the weird stance, how this figure is, holds itself, its pose. It's very, very awkward, and he has a tendency to fall down a lot because of the chicken legs, those bent back knees. Maybe it's just mine possibly, but he always falls and teeters over and falls down. That's why I highly recommend, if you have the extra revenue, if you pick up this figure, definitely get a flight stand for this guy. He absolutely would shine with a flight stand. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get one myself. They've been sold out, and they always sell out. I have not been able to find one. They might actually have more coming in shortly from what I've been told by the Four Horsemen, but this is a phenomenal figure. It gets even better with the add-on packs. When you add those big, big wings, when you take off the little stubbly wings, when you put the big expansive wings on that have articulation, this figure shines even more. This figure just looks that damn good. I definitely recommend this figure. It's absolutely a buy in my opinion. I hope you like this video. Remember to click that like button, click the big subscribe button you see at the bottom of the page, and you can click windows over here to watch more of my content. Take care guys, I'll see you in the next video, and bye bye.